Hi folks, Sam Wenzel here from Sam's Woodland Tours, and today I wanted to do a little talk on the One Tigris, One Tiger, or Tiger's Den I should call it. So One Tigris makes a variety of outdoor equipment, and I was doing a little tent shopping lately, and I was looking at a few different, I was going to get another style of the dome style tent. Then I got looking and realized that these guys make this, and what it is, it's a form of what's known as the old-fashioned baker style tent. So if anyone's familiar with the classic camping era and also prior to that, so any of the old-fashioned canvas tents, this one is actually modeled after it. So you see a lot of the canoe trips, if anyone knows of the mountain man type of era. Horace Kephart was a big fan of baker tents. And baker tents are kind of similar to the A-frame wedge tent, however, more of a lean-to and less of a wedge. So I do have a couple videos talking about the canvas wedge tent that I have, and maybe I'll add some links to that. But what this one is, maybe I'll get you to come around and show this, and I'll grab the camera here in a second and do a little filming, is instead of just closing up like a traditional tent, or what we think now of as a traditional tent, we have this little vestibule area out front. So this one is very easy to customize with the tent. So the basic part of the tent is we have over there, you have two poles, and the tent package includes poles, string, and pegs. And in order to get it set up, basically you have, like very much like my wedge tent, two poles go up in the middle there, and then you use tension. So you'd either peg it or use trees. Today I used, or this weekend I used a couple of trees, but then the rest of the lines go down to pegs in the ground. So it's held up by the poles and tension from the strings. So it can take a little bit to get it up, but once it's up, and if you have the tension right, it's pretty sturdy. With this though, so traditionally a baker tent, you would have the option of closing off one side or two sides. The difference between this one and a canvas tent though is the canvas baker tents, they had winter time in mind, or fall, spring, the cooler times. So you'd actually have a fire in front of your baker tent, or some people would even have a small fireplace or a brazier or something like that burning in front. The main difference between this one and that one is, instead of canvas, which would be flame retardant, it would be fireproof, or to a degree, this is more like a nylon material, in which case you want to keep open flame away from that. So the main benefit to the old style baker tent was that to some degree. But what we have here, we have the baker style, but for the summertime we have a mesh door. So if you've ever done any amount of summertime camping, if you're in a climate that's at all hot, humid, you'll notice that some of the traditional or even our modern dome tents, they can get quite sticky even at night. So with this one, if you're okay with the fact that it's open here in the front, it's very light and breeze, and you can get a nice cross draft going through there. And in fact, if you can see through the back of the tent, One Tigris, their design there is the flap in the back is open, and you can raise or lower that as you wish if you wish to close off the ventilation. So instead of getting it kind of hot and sticky, you got a nice, comfortable, airy, big room. So this one sleeps between, they say, I think somewhere on there 3 or 4 people. For me though, it's kind of nice to just have a couple of people in there, 3 at the most, if you have gear. However, of course, we have this vestibule. You know how tent companies often say that it holds more people than it actually does? Because once you get your sleeping bags rolled out, you kind of need a little bit of space depending on how cozy you want to be with your camping partners. And after a week of camping, maybe you don't want to be in there with that many people. But we have the vestibule here, which is great for storing your gear in. So you can sit under there with lawn chairs, you can have your backpacks in under here. totally customizable in where you have these front tarps. So they send 2 extra tarps with. So we have one on the front here and one on the side. For the most part, I'm fairly happy with this. I mean, for the price I paid for it, I found it on Amazon. This is actually fantastic for what it is. One thing I would note, and I did see this on a couple other YouTube videos, I would consider adding a little bit of more cordage. If you're into bushcraft, you want to have some paracord with you, I consider having a little extra and maybe some extra tent pegs just for keeping those tarps, those side tarps down. But other than that, the whole package itself is absolutely fantastic. And I will note something. I may do another video on setting it up in a couple of different configurations down the line. But something to note is the fact that it seems really light for what it is. So it's a nice light tent, pretty good waterproof wise, but nice light tent. I just spent the better part of the weekend camping in it, and I would actually go as far as to say is, depending on the trip, I would backpack this in, because these poles are very light, and I'm pretty sure I've carried in heavier tents and heavier material. So for what it is and the cool design and setup, I think it would be beneficial to backpack it in. So you get the front part where if you want to, if it's a little bit rainy, you could sit under there with lawn chairs or stools. Table. Again, of course, you want to make sure that you don't want to have your food right where you're sleeping, depending on where you are at the time of year. One thing I will note, and this isn't true necessarily, this is true of a lot of tents. Now it's been a little windy, so this is shifted, and I'm going to adjust my lines. And of course, one pulls up a little higher, so I'm going to make some adjustments. But you see how this is kind of going to do that. As it rains, it's going to fill up, so you'll have to keep an eye on that, or as I just said, I'll make some more adjustments. It's been a little breezy here today, so it's shifted a tiny bit, especially on the duff there on the ground. So once I get that fixed, it'll be ready to leave. Now I would suggest, like many tents, having a ground sheet. So you have a ground sheet here, it's extended. If it were really raining, of course, your ground sheet along the sides, and I'll get to adjust that again. You're going to want to tuck that in so the water doesn't pool on it. But a ground sheet is a good little extra layer. I'm just using a cheap tarp, but you can go as expensive as you want with those tarps. One thing I will also mention is what I don't get with my canvas tents. Up here on the top flap, the kind of neat thing is we have a zipper. So Baker tents and wedge tents, my convertible wedge tent, you can actually take your top flap and bring it down, and that makes an A-frame tent. Now a lot of Baker tents will just have this back lean-to, and the front flap closes down and it just creates a lean-to style tent. In stormy weather, you would just slide in and you wouldn't necessarily have your vestibule, because of course the windier and stormier this gets, or if it's filling up with water, you don't necessarily want this flopping around. But with this, what One Tigris did, and I haven't seen any others with it, but this is one of the first Baker style. They do have a couple other ones that are, I'm seeing the bushcraft shelter and a couple other ones that fit in this style, but this is the biggest one that I've seen so far. It has a zipper on the sides, so what you want to do, or what you can do, is you can close that up and zipper it shut, rather than your canvas tents just buttoning it up or just leaving it lay. So that's a neat feature. And I know I said the tent capacity always seems to be exaggerated. I don't know, maybe some people seem to be taller or bigger or whatever. But they say, I believe this one, I'm going to have to check, I think it's somewhere between 3 and 4 people. You could lay 3 or 4 people out in there, but once you get your bed rolls and stuff like that, your sleeping bags, blankets, whatever, you're going to find that that seems to be the norm for all tents. Maybe I'm crazy, but you may not want to fit that many people in. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, where we don't have the fire, which is the main selling points of some of the canvas tents. Now, of course, Baker tent you could use in the summertime. You just have to be willing to live with the mosquitoes. But with these guys, this tent got that nice mesh door, so it's nice and cool in the evening. Doesn't get too hot during the day. So if you're able to have this open, but quite a bit of space for what it is. So if you're looking for a budget Baker style tent to enjoy, you don't necessarily want to lug the canvas one around, but you kind of want this. I can actually see myself setting this up at some campgrounds. So places like provincial or national parks, not just here in the woods. And this would be fantastic for canoe tripping, I'd imagine. Nice and light, so you know, you could consider it as a backpacking tent depending on how long or how far you're going and how much stuff you're taking. I mean, it is, for what the cost is, it's a pretty great tent considering how much it costs. I'm only familiar with some of their gear, but this is actually making me a bigger fan of the company. I'm sure I may try some more stuff out. Like I said, I think I'll do a few more videos as time goes on. Maybe a video on how to set it up. There's probably a few of those out there already. But I'm excited to have some fun with this. If you enjoyed this video or found it all helpful, again, I recommend going checking this out. Please hit like and subscribe, comment down below. And until next time, I'm Sam Wenzel. Thank you for watching.